priests and nuns and some lay people too, and we're going to do what Mother Teresa does. And I checked my lunar calendar to see if it was a full moon. And I said, well, Marty, that's a great idea, but if you're going to start a group of nuns and priests, you really need the bishop's permission and maybe even the Pope. So maybe we should aim a little lower. Let's start with lay people. And he said, okay. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, we want to feed hungry people in our area. And I said, well, how are we going to do that? And he said, we're going to make them meals, and then we're going to freeze them, and then we're going to deliver them to their home. And I said, well, isn't that what Meals on Wheels does throughout the county? And he says, well, Meals on Wheels does take meals to people throughout the county, but not everybody qualifies for Meals on Wheels. And so what we want to do is help anybody that needs a meal. And I said, well, who else would that be? And he said, well, say you come home from the hospital and you can't cook for yourself or you don't feel like cooking. Well, we would bring you a meal. And then I thought, well, this is so crazy, it's not going to get anywhere. So let's just say yes and let them try it and let them fail. Doesn't that sound prudent to all of you? I think it made sense. So I said, we'll start off with $500 from St. Vincent de Paul money, because it's kind of like a St. Vincent de Paul thing we should do, and we'll see how it goes. So June was the first year they were up and running. And I saw him right at the end of June. I said, how many meals did we make this month? And he said, 110. And how many did you deliver? 110. I said, that's great. Great start, Marty. Well, one thing led to another. Last October, we prepared, packaged, froze, and delivered 5,100 meals throughout Lake County, Ohio. We've received about every award that Meals on Wheels, Council on Aging, Northeast Ohio, Council on Senior Citizens can give, and the Greater Cleveland Food Bank as well, which is a good partner with us. That was overreaching a bit of what we can really do. And so through the help of Catholic Charities and the Cleveland Food Bank and the Meals on Wheels people, we've done things to kind of tailor that down. But we consistently do about 3,000 to 3,500 meals a month. And people are very generous in volunteering. It's probably, I should say, it's a ministry for 60-year-olds. 60-year-old women, but also men who do most of the cooking. And we're blessed with lots of different ethnic groups in the parish, so there's lots of good food. I was worried, they're cooking in the basement of the rectory is now like a catering kitchen. And I thought, well, I'm going to smell all this food, but it's really good smells, so I don't mind. And then frequently, a lot of our drivers are men that are retired or guys that kind of lost their jobs in the recession, but they're in their 60s and they don't really want to go back to work, and they can afford, they don't really have to keep working. And so we have a good core of volunteers of all ages. There's one young family, gosh, I think they have 6 kids already, and the oldest is only in the 2nd grade. And she takes all the kids with her, and she delivers meals one day a week, puts them all in the van, and off they go. And it's really great, and it appeals to people that really wouldn't get involved in things. I had one lady last year, her name was Connie Cook, and she came up to me and she said, I never did anything in this parish. And I said, well, I don't know you that well, but if you say so, okay. And she said, but I do this. And I said, well, I'm very grateful that you do. And she said, well, this is one thing that I really think we all should be doing, and I really like it. And so it's something that appealed to her, of helping people find, I guess, their niche and sharing their talents. And it's certainly what she and others are doing with that. Back in 2007, there's a friend of mine he's from the Congo, Monsignor Nindu. He's from Kananga, Congo. And he has a lot of friends in Cleveland because he came to Cleveland back when he was in the seminary in Rome. Actually, he was already a priest, and he wanted to learn English. And so we stayed friends, and when I was on our mission team in El Salvador, he was stationed in the nunciature in Guatemala, which are neighboring countries in Central America, just a short bus ride apart, really. So we got to see each other more often. I got to live in an air-conditioned room for 2 days or so and see the big city in Guatemala. But anyways, he came to visit and stayed with us for about a month, and he would just talk about things in his own parish, of how they had 300 orphans to take care of, most of their parents have died of AIDS, and there they are, and he has to take care of them. They have a school that they're trying to expand on. He talked about they really have no clinic in their town, and that one poor woman died giving childbirth on the side of a road because there was no one to help her. And he really touched the hearts of a lot of people. And at the last Finance Council meeting we had before he left, one of the Finance Council members said, you know, we should help Msgr Nindu build his clinic. And they said, Father Troha, how much money did he say he needs? I was beginning to panic. And I said, I think he said 80,000. And they said, well, we should give him $80,000. And they all said, yeah. And I said, well, let's not rush into this. I said, why don't we give him $40,000 this year and then see how things go in another few years, give him another $40,000. And one of the mothers spoke up and she said, Father, he needs $80,000 and they need a clinic. Isn't this what stewardship is all about? Let's help him. So how could I say no? I didn't realize I needed the bishop's permission to give that much money away, but it's called alienating church funds, and only he can approve it. But he approved it. He approved it readily, and that clinic is up and running. And in the subsequent years, we've given him another $40,000, just donations that have come in, really from all over Cleveland, not just our parish, of other people that know him. And so that's really great to know, and that we're helping our brothers and sisters in Africa who really are in dire need of help like that. And that's something that appeals to certain people in the parish that nothing else would really touch their hearts. You know, I remember I was at a Knights of Columbus meeting shortly after we gave money to the clinic, and one of the knights said to me, because I mentioned Msgr Nindu and his clinic, and he was very grateful, and the man said, oh, that clinic. And I said, well, what's the matter? You don't like it that we helped him build the clinic? And he said, no, that's all my wife talks about. She said, it's about time we spend money for some good purpose around here. So there you go. But anyways, we continue our stewardship efforts by really doing the same thing year after year that involves the mechanics of the stewardship renewal. It includes, we've done 2 surveys over the last 7 years that are very helpful in helping us pinpoint things that we ought to be doing in the parish that perhaps nobody would have thought of without doing that survey. We've done a parish pictorial directory, which helps people get to know each other. We've expanded our hospitality efforts, and we keep working on that. But you know, the one thing that we do is we realize that it's about continuing conversion. We're called to conversion every day of our life. If you want to be my disciple, pick up your cross each day and follow me. And so conversion is for everybody. It's not just making Catholics out of non-baptized and Protestants. It's not just about First Communion and confirmation for kids. Its formation in our faith begins with adults, as Pope John Paul II tells us, and Pope Benedict as well. And then the adults in turn catechize their children. And so it's really about continuing conversion, all of our stewardship efforts. What we've done is take the 4 pillars of stewardship and we apply them to the whole parish. And I visited Father Dave's parish a couple of years ago, and I saw how he did his bulletin. I went home and we did the exact same thing. We have those same categories for our bulletin too. And I try to emphasize with all the ministry leaders in their own ministries that those 4 pillars are part of their ministry, not just part of the whole parish. In other words, at our parish council meeting, we begin with a social and prayer, and then we get into the meeting. We had a 50-plus club when I first arrived, which was a complete euphemism. 30 years ago when they started it, it was a 50-plus club. Now it's an 80-plus club. And it kind of went out of business because nobody wanted to be in the leadership. Nobody wanted to be the president of the club. and that's understandable. And so they agreed that they would disband, but they gave half the money to Monsignor Nindu's clinic, and then they gave half the money. I said, well, let's keep on hand because we'll start it up again in another year or two. So we resurrected the senior, we call it the senior ministry instead of the 50-plus club. And one of our pastoral associates, who's a certified lay ecclesial minister, she said, be happy to head it up. And I said, well, we're going to approach it the same way we do Life Teen. Life Teen does prayer, right? Then they have their social, they do hospitality. It's all hospitality and prayer, the first part. Then they do formation in their life nights as well as service. And I said, we'll do the same thing with the seniors. We can do prayer, so we changed our mass times to noon, because contrary to some popular belief, all senior citizens do not get up at 5 o'clock. Grandma Zardin did, but my mother certainly didn't. And seniors seem to prefer a noon-type mass. We then gather afterwards. They have social. And then we have formation of some kind. And eventually, and they are of service. They're really our most active parishioners involved in all sorts of ministries. Well, when she told them that, they didn't like that. They said, we want a club. We don't want to do all that. We just want a club. So I said, let me talk to them. So I went to the meeting and I said, everything we do as a parish. We are here, why? We're here because we're disciples of Jesus. We're here to make new disciples and to share what we have and to form ourselves to be good disciples. So everything is about being a disciple. That's what we're here for. And so just as with the teenagers, they do prayer and social together, but they also do formation. They learn about our faith and personalize that, and they also are of service by things that they do. This is what we'll do as senior citizens. And if you want a club, you can walk 2 blocks that way to the Browning Center, which the city of Willoughby has, which is a senior center. It's a wonderful senior center. And you can have all the free lunches and all the casino bus trips that you want. But here we're about being disciples. And that doesn't mean we're not going to have a lot of fun. We're still going to do things that we do, but we're going to do it as part of the parish and part of being disciples. And so in this way, we're kind of intensifying our efforts at discipleship, at stewardship as we continue on year to year. I certainly see change of heart in myself and in so many parishioners because they share their stories with me. One man, his name is Todd Vogler, and he's in his early 30s. Well, now he's more like in his later 30s, but about 5 years ago he found out he had cancer, some kind of stage something lymphoma. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it all. And he works security at one of the hospitals in Cleveland. And he's the kind of guy, if you go to Coffee and Donuts, he'll come up to you and introduce himself. He's very gregarious, and he'll say, hi, I'm Todd Vogler. I have stage whatever lymphoma, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I finally realized how much God has given me. I finally realized what a wonderful wife I have and what a treasure she is and what a beautiful child God has blessed my wife and me with. And then Todd told me how he had to get the bomb treatment. That I said, what's that? And he said, they're going to wipe out my whole immune system and then rebuild it, and I have to be in complete isolation for 1 month, and not even my wife can see me. And he said, I asked a friend of mine who's also a cop. A friend asked me, he said, well, can I do anything for you? And he said, well, the only thing I really want, he said, would be like a laptop computer so I can have some communication on the outside while I'm recovering for the month. But he said, but I don't think that's going to happen. The next day, his friend showed up with a laptop computer for him. And he said, well, what's this? And he says, my 2 brothers and I, what we all agreed to do a few years ago was when we cash our paychecks every 2 weeks, we put whatever's left over after the $100 mark, and then we use that money to help people out that need help. And this is what we want to do for you. We have this diocesan campaign that we were a pilot parish for. Some of you probably have the similar campaign in your diocese called Rooted in Faith, Forward in Hope. And it's a diocesan endowment campaign, really, like to raise money for the priest retirement fund, for Catholic schools, for education of lay leadership and those kinds of things. And part of the campaign involved getting some of the parishioners to call up parishioners and make appointments with them and present kind of the details of the campaign to them, and then ask them for a pledge. And I believe those were the people asking other parishioners for $25,000. That was the category we were working on at that time, because everybody was divided up into categories of asking. And there was one parishioner, Noreen Saywell, who was just on fire with this, because it was a group of about 14 or 15 parishioners that were helping me out during this stage. And what they would do is they would take like 3 names a week, and they would make appointments to see these 3 people and then ask them for a pledge on a return visit appointment. And they would come back and report, well, I was only able to get 1 pledge this week, and I was only able to contact 1 person this week. Noreen would come back and say, well, I took 3 and another 3, and I made 6 appointments, and I got 6 commitments already and X amount of thousands of dollars in pledges. And everybody would just say, wow. And then she would take the ones that were difficult cases that other people couldn't work with, and she would get some success out of them. There was one, everybody said, you're not going to get a penny out of them, and she did. She got a $10,000 pledge. Well, anyways, she stayed late after the meeting one night, and I said to her, Noreen, how come you're just on fire with this? I said, if we were selling aluminum siding, you would have won the trip to the Bahamas weeks ago. And she said to me, Father, the doctors told me that my cancer is back and it doesn't look good this time, and I want to do everything I can for my parish before I die. And she was dead about 4 months later. She did die of cancer at home. And what I want to say is, in conclusion, is that as pastor, you really do see a change of heart in people for the better. They really take their discipleship seriously, and such tremendous examples of faith. It really is something. And you yourself, once you enter into that spirit of stewardship, notice that in other people that you probably wouldn't have noticed before. I went to Orlando, Florida to talk to a parish, to give a retreat in a parish. And when I was at the rental car desk, the lady, she was about my age or so, and she was helping out, and then we were all done, and she said, now, do you have any questions? And I do this stupid thing frequently with waitresses, these 20-something-year-old waitresses, and they said, do you have any questions? And I'll say, yes. What is the meaning of life? And I usually get a giggle. But I asked her this. She said, do you have any questions? And I said, yes. What is the meaning of life? And this time there was no giggle. She looked right at me. You could tell she was thinking. And she said, when you get up in the morning, realize that every day is a blessing. And just like Father Jim was telling us, what a way to start going to a stewardship conference by what he heard. What a way to start a stewardship weekend at a parish than by an example like that. And so I'm very happy to share my experience with you, because it has really changed my life for the better. It has really helped me put my tasks and my ministry as a priest in focus in serving Christ as his disciples and in serving my parish. And I hope that you too will feel the same way and you'll have similar experiences yourself. So thanks very much.